Julie stood in the dim kitchen of her suburban home, the weight of 35 years of marriage pressing against her chest like a stone. At 55, once soft, her hands were calloused from decades of cooking, cleaning, and mending the frayed edges of her family's life. She was a retired college professor. Her days were once filled with the hum of lecture halls, but now they echoed the demands of her husband, Ethan, and their daughter, Emily. The air smelled of jasmine tonight, a scent that stung her heart, for it wasn't for her. It was for Sophie, Ethan's first love, whose name had crept back into their lives like a persistent ghost. Ethan paced the living room, his voice low but insistent. Sophie's paralyzed, Julie. After the car accident, she has no one. I want to bring her here to our home. We'll take care of her. His eyes, usually distant, burned with a fervor Julie hadn't seen in years. She knew the story. Sophie, returning from abroad, had met Ethan to reminisce. On their drive, they'd switched seats, a twist of fate that saved Ethan, but left Sophie with a severed leg and a life in a wheelchair. Guilt consumed him, and now he sought to atone by uprooting their marriage. Julie's mind reeled. She'd heard this plea before in another life, one where she'd said yes. The memory wasn't a dream, but a visceral truth etched into her bones. 7 days after agreeing to care for Sophie, Julie had collapsed. Her body spent from exhaustion, her heart broken by betrayal. She'd died, buried without a whisper of what killed her, only to watch from some ethereal vantage as Ethan and Sophie claimed a marriage certificate on the day of her funeral. The knowledge had haunted her, a wound that refused to heal. During another of Ethan's pleas, Julie's anger erupted that morning. "Why me? She's not my burden," she'd screamed, her voice cracking under the strain. The room spun, her chest tightened, and she fainted, collapsing onto the cold tile floor. In that darkness, a vision seized her. A grave, her name carved in stone, and a voice, not her own, whispering, "You have 7 days. Live this time." When she awoke, gasping, Ethan hovering over her, she knew she'd been reborn, granted a second chance by some cosmic force she couldn't name. The vision wasn't a warning, but a command. Survive at all costs. Standing in the kitchen, Julie felt the weight of that command. Her hands trembled as she gripped the counter, the jasmine scent mingling with the bitter tang of her resolve. She'd spent her life as the dutiful wife, the selfless mother, sacrificing her dreams to keep the family whole. Society had taught her well. Women endured, served, and silenced their own needs for harmony. She'd swallowed that lesson, letting it choke her ambitions, her joy. But no more. The vision of her grave had shattered the illusion that endurance equaled virtue. "Julie, are you listening?" Ethan's voice cut through her thoughts, sharp with impatience. "Sophie needs us. It's the right thing to do." Julie turned, her eyes meeting his. She'd agreed without hesitation in her past life, moved by his tears, hoping her sacrifice would mend their fraying bond. She'd cared for Sophie, cooked her meals, bathed her, all while Ethan's gratitude faded into indifference, and Emily, her daughter, sided with Sophie, calling Julie cruel for her quiet resentment. That path led to death, a slow suffocation under the weight of their needs. This time, she'd choose differently. "Fine," she said, her voice steady, almost cold. "Bring her here." Ethan's jaw dropped, his eyes widening as if he'd misheard. He'd braced for a fight, for the tears and screams that had defined their recent days. Julie's calm agreement unnerved him, and for a moment she saw a flicker of doubt in his gaze. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice softer, almost hopeful. "Don't overthink it," Julie replied, turning back to the sink. "I want her to be comfortable." The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. She didn't dare admit the truth. Not to Ethan yet. Her heart pounded with the knowledge that in 7 days, she'd collapse again if she followed the same path. Survival meant letting go, not just of Sophie's care, but of the life she'd built on others' expectations. She was 55, her youth spent, but her will to live burned brighter than ever. As Ethan retreated to the living room, muttering about logistics, Julie's thoughts drifted to Emily. At 30, Emily was a mirror of Julie's younger self, eager to please, blind to her worth. Julie had carried her for 10 months and poured her soul into raising her. Yet Emily's loyalty now leaned towards Sophie, swayed by years of Ethan's secret visits to his first love. The betrayal cut deeper than Julie could voice, a wound that pulsed with every jasmine-scented breath. She closed her eyes, the vision of her grave flashing again. Cold earth, her name fading under moss. The whispering voice returned. "Live this time." Julie exhaled, her resolve hardening. She'd been a wife, a mother, a servant to society's invisible rules. But now, reborn, she'd rewrite her story. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming the life she'd buried long before her death. As the kitchen clock ticked, marking the first of her 7 days, Julie vowed to break free, no matter the cost to the family she'd once held dear. The living room was bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, casting long shadows across the worn furniture that had witnessed decades of Julie's life with Ethan. The air was tense, the jasmine scent from Sophie's flowers lingering like an unwelcome guest. Julie stood by the window, her reflection faint against the night, her mind still reeling from the vision of her grave, the cold stone, the whispering voice urging her to live. At 55, she felt the weight of her rebirth, a second chance to escape the death that had claimed her in another life, just 7 days after she'd agreed to care for Sophie. Ethan sat on the couch, his hands clasped tightly, his voice breaking the silence. "Julie, we need to talk about Sophie again. She's alone, paralyzed. I can't leave her like that." His tone was a mix of determination and guilt, his eyes searching hers for the resistance he'd grown accustomed to. In her past life, Julie had fought this request with tears and screams, her heart torn between duty and resentment. She'd caved, hoping her sacrifice would bind Ethan closer, but it had only chained her to a bed of exhaustion, her body and spirit crumbling under Sophie's needs and Ethan's indifference. Now, reborn knowing her fate, Julie felt a clarity that cut through her old fears. The vision of her grave wasn't just a memory. It was a warning, a cosmic nudge to choose herself over the societal script that demanded women sacrifice endlessly. She turned from the window, her face calm, her voice steady. "Fine, Ethan, get her. Bring Sophie here." The words slipped out with an ease that startled even her, each syllable a step toward freedom. Ethan's jaw slackened, his eyes widening as if he'd been slapped. "You're agreeing? Just like that?" His voice trembled, caught between relief and disbelief. He'd braced for a battle, the familiar cycle of Julie's protests and his defensive guilt. Her sudden acquiescence threw him off balance, and for a moment, he looked like a man who'd won a prize he didn't understand. "Do you mean it? Will you help take care of her?" "Don't overthink it," Julie said. Her tone clipped as she moved to the kitchen counter, pulling her insurance card from her purse. "I want her to be comfortable. Let's go. I need to get to the hospital." Her words were a shield, hiding the truth. She wasn't agreeing to care for Sophie, but to save herself. In her past life, she'd ignored her health, pouring her energy into Sophie's meals and baths, only to collapse and die, undiagnosed, unmissed. This time, she'd check for any hidden illness, any ticking bomb that could steal her second chance. Ethan followed her to the car, his silence heavy with confusion. As Julie drove, the city lights blurred past, each one a reminder of the life she'd nearly lost. Through the rearview mirror, she caught Ethan rubbing his palms together, a nervous tic she knew well from their 35 years together. It was the gesture of a man whose dream was within reach, a joy that stemmed from her surrender. The sight twisted her heart, not with jealousy, but with the bitter realization of how little she'd meant to him. He'd never rubbed his palms for her, not when she'd cooked his favorite meals or stayed up nursing Emily through fevers. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" Ethan asked, his voice tentative as they neared the hospital. "Sophie's disabled now. She has no one else." His words were a plea, not for Julie's consent, but for absolution from the guilt that had haunted him since Sophie's accident. Julie nodded, her face a mask of indifference. "I said it's fine. Let's not drag this out." Her curtness silenced him, and she parked the car, her mind racing with the urgency of her mission. Survive the next 7 days. No matter what. Julie's resolve hardened as they stepped into the hospital's sterile light. She wasn't here for Sophie, despite Ethan's assumptions. She was here for herself, to defy the fate that had buried her once. In her past life, she'd let society's expectations, being the good wife and selfless mother, dictate her choices, silencing her needs. Now, she saw those expectations for what they were, chains forged by a world that praised women for enduring pain. Her rebirth was a rebellion against that script, a chance to write a story where she was the hero, not the martyr. Ethan trailed behind, his confusion palpable. "You're acting strange," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. 30 minutes ago, you were screaming about Sophie. Now you're calm. What's going on?" Julie didn't answer, and her steps quickened toward the emergency department. She wouldn't explain, not yet. The vision of her grave, the voice's command to live, was hers alone, a secret that fueled her transformation. Let Ethan think she'd softened. Let him believe she'd bend again. She'd use his assumptions to buy time and secure her health and freedom. The hospital loomed ahead, its fluorescent lights a beacon of hope and fear. Julie clutched her insurance card, her heart pounding with the weight of her choice. Agreeing to Sophie's presence wasn't surrender. It was strategy, a way to keep Ethan off guard while she fought for her life. As she pushed through the doors, the jasmine scent faded, replaced by the sharp tang of antiseptic. This was her first step, not toward duty, but toward a future where she'd live, truly live, for herself. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a stark glow on the linoleum floor as Julie strode toward the emergency department. Her heart thumped, each beat a reminder of the 7 days she had left to defy the fate that had buried her in another life. The vision of her grave, her name etched in mossy stone, the whispering voice urging, "Live this time," clung to her like a shadow. At 55, Julie was no stranger to sacrifice. But now, reborn, she refused to let it kill her again. The antiseptic air stung her nostrils, a sharp contrast to the jasmine scent that had haunted her home, a symbol of Ethan's devotion to Sophie, not her. Ethan trailed behind, his footsteps hesitant, his confusion palpable. "Julie, you're going the wrong way," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. "Sophie's in the inpatient ward, not here." He reached for her arm, but Julie shook him off, her eyes fixed on the triage desk. "Get her yourself," she snapped, her tone cutting through his assumptions. "I'm here to get checked out. I'm not your errand girl." Ethan's face flushed, his mouth opening to protest. But Julie turned away, clutching her insurance card like a lifeline. In her past life, she'd ignored her health, pouring her energy into Sophie's care. Meals, baths, endless errands, until exhaustion claimed her. She'd died without knowing why, her body failing under the weight of a family that took her for granted. This time she'd uncover any hidden threat, any silent illness that could steal her second chance. The vision of her grave wasn't just a memory. It was a call to action, a cosmic push to break free from the societal mold that demanded women endure silently, their own needs buried beneath others' demands. At the triage desk, Julie's voice was firm. "I need a complete physical. Blood work, scans, everything." The nurse raised an eyebrow but nodded, handing her a clipboard. As Julie filled out the forms, Ethan hovered nearby, his palms rubbing together, a nervous tick that betrayed his discomfort. "You're not sick," he said, his tone sharp. "You fainted because you were upset about Sophie. You were out for 2 minutes, then you woke up. You're just trying to make me feel guilty." Julie's pen paused, her jaw tightening. His words stung, echoing the dismissal she'd faced for decades. In their 35 years of marriage, Ethan had rarely seen her pain, her fatigue, her quiet pleas for support. She'd been the pillar who cooked, cleaned, and raised Emily, while he basked in praise of neighbors who called him a saint. Society had taught her to swallow her struggles, to be the good wife who never complained. But now, her rebirth had shattered that illusion. "You're wrong," she said, her voice low but fierce. "I'm not cursing myself to guilt you. I'm trying to live." Ethan blinked, taken aback, but Julie returned to the forms, her heart racing with fear and defiance. She wasn't here to explain her rebirth or the vision that haunted her. Let him think she overreacted. It kept him at bay while she fought for survival. The nurse called her name and Julie followed, leaving Ethan in the waiting area, his expression a mix of confusion and irritation. In the exam room, the doctor, a kind-eyed woman in her 40s, listened as Julie described her fainting spell and her need for a thorough checkup. Tests were ordered: blood panels, an EKG, and a CT scan. As Julie lay in the scanner, the hum of the machine a steady rhythm, her mind wandered to the life she'd nearly lost. She saw Emily's face, her daughter's laughter replaced by cold allegiance to Sophie. She saw Ethan's indifference, his palm-rubbing excitement for another woman. The pain of their betrayal cut deep, but it fueled her resolve. Alone in a quiet corridor, waiting for results, Julie pulled a small notebook from her purse. She'd started journaling after her rebirth, a way to process the fear and hope that warred within her. She wrote, "I died once, crushed by their needs. I saw my grave and felt the earth close over me. I'll live for me this time, even if it means losing them. Society says women should sacrifice, but I'm done with that lie. My life is mine." The words anchored her, a vow to defy the fate that loomed just days away. The doctor returned, her expression reassuring. "Your blood pressure's slightly high, likely from stress," she said. "Everything else, heart, lungs, scans, looks clear. You're getting older, you need rest and maybe some lifestyle changes." Julie exhaled, relief flooding her, though a thread of fear remained. No hidden cancer, no ticking bomb, but the doctor's words echoed the vision's warning: rest or die. She thanked the doctor, her mind already planning her next steps: distance from Ethan, from Sophie, from the life that had drained her. As she left the exam room, Ethan stood waiting, his arms crossed. "Well, you're fine, aren't you?" His tone was accusatory, as if her health was inconvenient. Julie met his gaze, her voice steady. "I'm fine for now, but I'm not doing this again, running myself into the ground for you or Sophie." She walked past him, the hospital's lights fading behind her. The vision of her grave lingered, but so did the voice's command. Live this time. This was her fight, not for love or approval, but for the life she'd been reborn to claim. The night air was cool as Julie pulled into the driveway of her suburban home. The hospital's antiseptic sting, replaced by the familiar scent of jasmine drifting from the porch. Her heart, buoyed by the doctor's assurance that no hidden illness lurked within her, now sank under the weight of returning to a house that no longer felt like hers. At 55, reborn with the vision of her grave still vivid, her name fading under moss, the voice whispering, "Live this time." Julie knew she had 6 days left to escape the fate that had killed her in another life. The hospital visit had been her first rebellion, a step toward survival, but the test awaited inside. She pushed open the front door, and laughter hit her like a slap, bright, carefree, and utterly foreign. Ethan sat on the couch, his face softened by a smile, while Sophie, in her wheelchair, glowed with a warmth that seemed staged. Emily, their 30-year-old daughter, perched beside Sophie, her eyes sparkling with a devotion that pierced Julie's chest. The laughter stopped cold as they noticed her, the room's warmth draining like water from a cracked vase. Julie's gaze landed on the jasmine flowers tucked into Sophie's wheelchair, a gesture from Ethan that he'd never made for her in 35 years of marriage. "Mom, where were you?" Emily's voice was sharp, her arms crossed. "You knew Aunt Sophie was moving in today. Why didn't you get her room ready?" The accusation stung each word, reminding me how far Emily had drifted. Julie had carried her for 10 months, sacrificed her career's peak to raise her, yet she was siding with Sophie, a woman who'd slipped into their lives like a thief. Sophie offered a bitter smile, her voice soft but calculated. "Julie, I've caused enough trouble. I'll leave right away." Ethan's face darkened, his finger jabbing toward Julie. "Sophie has nowhere else to go. Can't you show some compassion? Do you want her to die out there?" His words echoed the guilt he'd wielded since Sophie's accident, a burden he'd tried to shift onto Julie in her past life. Then she'd crumbled, agreeing to care for Sophie, only to die exhausted, betrayed by the family she'd served. Now, reborn, Julie saw through the manipulation, the societal expectation that she, as a woman, should bear the load without complaint. Her hand twitched, itching to slap Emily, to shake her awake from this unquestioning loyalty. Instead, she took a deep breath, her voice steady but cold. "I was at the hospital, Emily. Checking if I'm dying. I don't have time to play maid." Emily's eyes widened, but Sophie's smile faltered, her fingers tightening on her wheelchair. Julie's bluntness had disrupted their script, exposing the cracks in their unity. She turned, heading for the bedroom, her heart pounding with a mix of fury and grief. Inside, the sight stopped her cold. Her clothes, blouses she'd ironed, dresses she'd saved for special occasions, were scattered across the floor, shoved aside to make room for Sophie's belongings. The bed, freshly made with new sheets, held more jasmine flowers on the nightstand, their scent a cruel mockery of Ethan's neglect. Julie's chest tightened, the vision of her grave flashing again. Cold earth, her life erased. She'd been replaced, not just in Ethan's heart, but in her own home, by a woman whose accident had become his absolution. She sank onto the bed, her hands trembling as she pulled out her notebook. The words poured out. I gave everything, my youth, my dreams, for them. Emily calls Sophie aunt, but I'm the stranger now. Society says a mother endures and a wife obeys, but I'm done being their martyr. I'll live, even if it breaks us. Writing steadied her, anchoring her resolve. The vision's voice echoed. Live this time. She wouldn't let their betrayal bury her again. Ethan's voice boomed from the doorway. What's this about dying? You're fine, Julie. Stop making a scene. His tone dripped with dismissal, the same tone he'd used when she'd begged for help with Emily's fevers or the endless chores. Julie closed her notebook, meeting his gaze. You don't get to decide what I feel. Not anymore. Her words were a quiet rebellion, a refusal to shrink under his expectations. Emily appeared behind him, her face mixed with anger and confusion. Mom and Aunt Sophie did not ask for much. Why can't you help? The question was a knife twisting in Julie's heart. She saw herself in Emily, taught to please, sacrifice, and ignore her worth. Society had molded them both, but Julie's rebirth had broken that mold. She stood, her voice firm. If you love her so much, you help her. I'm not your servant. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling like dust. Sophie's eyes flickered with something, fear perhaps, or calculation. But Julie didn't care. She grabbed a suitcase from the closet, her movements deliberate. She wouldn't stay in a house where she was invisible, where jasmine flowers mocked her sacrifice. This betrayal from her daughter and husband was the final push. She'd fight for her life, not for their approval. And that fight started now, with the choice to walk away. The bedroom was a battlefield. Julie's scattered clothes were a testament to her erasure, her own home. The jasmine flowers on the nightstand mocked her, their scent a reminder of Ethan's devotion to Sophie, not her. At 55, Julie stood at the edge of a precipice, her suitcase open on the bed, her heart steeled by the vision of her grave, her name fading under moss, the voice whispering, live this time. Reborn with 6 days to escape the death that had claimed her in another life, she knew this moment was her breaking point. The betrayal of Ethan and Emily had cracked her foundation, but lit the fuse of her rebellion. Ethan loomed in the doorway, his face a storm of anger and confusion. You're making a scene, Julie. Stop this nonsense. His voice carried the weight of 35 years of dismissal, each word a brick in the wall he'd built to keep her in place. Emily stood beside him, her eyes flashing with indignation. Mom, Aunt Sophie's not asking for much. It's just cooking and chatting. Why are you being so selfish? The word selfish cut deep, a label society had long used to shame women who dared prioritize themselves over others' needs. Julie's hands trembled as she folded a blouse, her mind flashing to her past life. She'd cared for Sophie then, scrubbing floors, cooking meals, enduring Sophie's subtle barbs, broken cups blamed on Julie's resentment, and complaining to Ethan that Julie was unkind. She'd died for it, her body collapsing under exhaustion, her spirit crushed by a family that believed Sophie's lies. The vision of her grave had shown her the cost of that sacrifice, and now, reborn, she refused to repeat it. Society might expect her to endure, but she was done playing the martyr. She zipped the suitcase, her voice steady despite the storm within. I'm not your servant, Emily. If you love Sophie so much, you take care of her. Turning to Ethan, she reached into her purse and pulled a sheaf of divorce papers. She tossed them at him, the pages fluttering like leaves in a gale. Sign these. You can care for Sophie in bed for all I care. No one's stopping your true love." The words were a blade, cutting through decades of silent suffering. Ethan's face went slack, his eyes wide with shock. He bent to pick up the papers, his hands shaking as he read the title. "Petition for divorce. Are you crazy?" he sputtered, his voice rising. "After 35 years, you're throwing this away?" Julie met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm not crazy. I want to live." Her words hung in the air, a declaration of her rebirth, fueled by the vision's command to survive. She wouldn't explain the grave, the voice. They were hers, a private fire driving her forward. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mom, Dad, and I work. You're home all day. It's not hard to help Aunt Sophie." The plea was laced with entitlement, as if Julie's life existed to serve theirs. Julie's heart ached. Emily, her daughter, whom she'd raised with every ounce of love, now saw her as a tool, not a person. The pain was raw, but it sharpened her resolve. "If it's so easy, you do it," she said coldly. "I'm done." Sophie's voice, soft and deliberate, cut through the tension in the living room. "Julie, I don't want to cause trouble. I'll leave." Her words were a performance designed to paint Julie as the villain. Julie had fallen for it in her past life, guilted into compliance. Now, she saw the manipulation for what it was, a trap to keep her chained. She ignored Sophie, focusing on Ethan. "Sign the papers or don't. I'm leaving either way." Ethan's face darkened, his fingers crumpling the edges of the divorce papers. "Who's going to take care of Sophie if you go? You're being unreasonable." His accusation echoed society's demand. Women should sacrifice, their needs secondary to family harmony. But Julie's rebirth had shattered that expectation. She slung her suitcase over her shoulder, her notebook tucked inside, its pages filled with her vow to live. "Figure it out," she said, brushing past him. "I'm not your solution anymore." Emily grabbed her arm, her eyes wide with panic. "Mom, you can't just leave. What about me?" The question was a dagger twisting in Julie's heart. She saw herself in Emily, taught to please, sacrifice, and live for others' approval. But Julie's vision had freed her from that cage. She pulled away, her voice soft but firm. "You chose Sophie over me. Live with it." The words were her final cut, severing the ties that bound her to a daughter who'd forgotten her. As Julie walked to the front door, the jasmine scent faded, replaced by the crisp night air. The house, once her sanctuary, now felt like a tomb, the same tomb she'd seen in her vision. She stepped outside, the suitcase heavy, but her heart lighter. This wasn't just leaving. It was breaking free, a rebellion against the life that had nearly killed her. The voice's command echoed, "Live this time." With each step, Julie felt the chains of duty fall away, her path clear. Survive, no matter the cost to the family she'd once held dear. The hotel room glowed with the soft light of a chandelier, its opulence starkly contrasting with the cramped, jasmine-scented bedroom Julie had left behind. At 55, she stood by the window, gazing at the city's twinkling skyline, her suitcase unpacked on the plush carpet. 5 days remained to defy the fate that had buried her in another life, the vision of her grave. Her name fading under moss, the voice whispering, "Live this time," a constant pulse in her mind. Reborn, Julie had walked out on Ethan and Emily, their betrayal a wound that still bled and a spark that ignited her rebellion. With its crisp sheets and promise of solitude, this hotel was her first sanctuary. She sank onto the bed, her notebook open in her lap. The words flowed. "I saved for them, never for me. 35 years of scrimping, denying myself joy to keep them fed, clothed, and happy. Society taught me to be the selfless wife and the giving mother, but it lied. My worth isn't in what I give others. It's in me." The act of writing steadied her, a lifeline to the resolve born from her vision. In her past life, she'd cared for Sophie, ignoring her needs until exhaustion claimed her. Now, she'd reclaim the joy she'd buried under duty. The room service menu caught her eye, its pages listing delicacies she'd never allowed herself. Australian lobster, truffle risotto, a glass of aged Merlot. At home, she'd cooked frugal meals, saving for Emily's education and Ethan's hobbies. When they craved luxuries, they'd buy them, But Julie had told herself to be content with less to avoid greed. Now she dialed the concierge, her voice firm. "I want the lobster, the risotto, and the merlot for one." The order felt like a declaration, reclaiming her right to indulgence. As she waited, her phone buzzed. Ethan's name on the screen. She ignored it, but a voicemail followed, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. "Julie, come home. Sophie needs you. We all do." The words stung, but they also clarified her path. In her past life, such pleas had pulled her back, guilt chaining her to their needs. Now she saw them for what they were, demands disguised as love, rooted in a society that expected women to serve endlessly. She deleted the message, and her heart was lighter with each tap. The food arrived, the lobster's buttery aroma filling the room. Julie savored each bite, the richness a rebellion against years of self-denial. She sipped the merlot, its warmth spreading through her, and for the first time in decades, she felt alive, not as a wife or mother, but as herself. The vision's voice echoed, "Live this time." This meal wasn't just food, it was a vow to value herself, to reject the script that had nearly killed her. A knock at the door shattered her reverie. She opened it to find Ethan and Emily, their faces mixed with frustration and entitlement. Ethan's hands were stuffed in his pockets, his eyes avoiding hers. "Julie, this is ridiculous. You can't just run away." Sophie's settled in, but she needs help. "Come home." His tone assumed compliance, as if her absence was a tantrum to be soothed. Emily stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Mom, you're embarrassing us. Aunt Sophie's not asking for much. Why are you acting like this?" Julie's gaze swept over them, the lobster's aftertaste lingering on her tongue. She saw the family she'd built, now strangers demanding her sacrifice. "I'm not coming back," she said, her voice steady. "Either divorce Ethan or me or send Sophie away. I'm done being your maid." The words were a blade, cutting through their expectations. Ethan's face reddened, his mouth opening to argue, but Julie held up a hand. "Don't, I've given enough." Emily's eyes widened, landing on the room service tray. "You're eating like this? Lobster? You have never spent money on yourself before." Her tone was accusatory, as if Julie's indulgence was a betrayal. Julie smiled, a bitter edge to it. "I never valued myself before." "That's changed." She stepped back, gesturing to the door. "Leave. I'm not your solution anymore." Ethan's voice rose, a desperate edge to it. "It's not a big deal, Julie. Just help with Sophie. You're not getting younger. Stop making a scene." His words echoed society's demand. Women should age quietly, their needs secondary to family. But Julie's rebirth had shattered that expectation. She leaned against the doorframe, her voice cold. "Dream on, Ethan. I'm not playing housemaid for your sweetheart. Sign the papers, or I'll see you in court." Emily's face crumpled, her voice a plea. "Mom, what about me? I'm your daughter." The words tugged at Julie's heart, but she saw the truth. Emily had chosen Sophie, blinded by years of Ethan's influence. "You made your choice," Julie said softly. "Live with it." She closed the door, the click final. The silence that followed a balm. Alone, she returned to her notebook, writing, "They think I'm selfish, but I'm just learning to live. The grave taught me that." The city lights sparkled outside, each one a promise of a life unbound. Julie sipped the last of her Merlot, the vision's command clear. Live this time. This hotel room, meal, and defiance were her first steps toward a self she'd never known. She wasn't just surviving. She was embracing her worth. And no one, not Ethan, not Emily, could take that from her. The university lecture hall hummed with the chatter of students, a familiar melody that stirred Julie's heart as she stepped onto the campus. At 55, she carried the weight of her rebirth, the vision of her grave, her name fading under moss. The voice whispering, "Live this time," a quiet fire driving her forward. 4 days remained to escape the fate that had killed her in another life. But Julie's escape was no longer just about survival. It was about rediscovery. Leaving Ethan and Emily had unshackled her from their betrayal, and the hotel's opulence had awakened her to her worth. Now she sought purpose, a reason to rise each morning beyond the shadow of her past. The university had invited her back as a part-time professor, an offer she'd declined before her rebirth, too tethered to family demands. Now she accepted, drawn to the classroom's promise of meaning. As she arranged her notes on the podium, the door burst open, and Anna, a former student, bounded in, her arms laden with a nylon bag. "Aunt Julie!" she cried, her voice a burst of sunlight. At 22, Anna was a whirlwind of energy, her dark eyes sparkling with gratitude. She set the bag down, revealing her hometown's smoked pork and dried vegetables. "I bought these for you. I know you love them." Julie's heart swelled, the sting of Emily's betrayal softened by Anna's warmth. She'd sponsored Anna through middle and high school, moved by the girl's story, orphaned, nearly forced out of school by a struggling brother and sister-in-law, yet fierce in her determination to learn. Julie had seen herself in Anna's grit, a reflection of the dreams she'd buried under societal expectations to be a selfless wife and mother. "Julie said you didn't have to," smiling as she peeked into the bag. "But I'm glad you did." Anna grinned, plopping into a chair. "I owe you everything, Aunt Julie. You believed in me when no one else did." Her words carried a weight beyond gratitude, and Anna opened up as they sipped tea in Julie's office. "After my parents died, I worked nights cleaning offices to stay in school. My brother's family could barely feed themselves, let alone me. Your sponsorship wasn't just money. It was hope. I promised myself I'd make you proud." She paused, her voice softening. "I'm a freelance photographer, paying my way with student loans. I want to be someone you'd respect." Julie's throat tightened, and Anna's story mirrors the horror of her struggle for self-worth. In her past life, she'd poured her energy into Ethan and Emily, only to die unappreciated, her grave a silent testament to her sacrifice. Anna's pride, her refusal to lean on others, was a lesson Julie was only now learning. "You already are someone I respect," she said, her voice thick. "You're stronger than I was at your age, fighting for yourself." Anna's eyes lit up, but she waved off the praise. "You're the strong one. I heard you left your husband. That takes guts." The campus rumor mill had been busy, but Anna's tone held no judgment, only admiration. Julie hesitated, then shared a sliver of her truth. "I had to. I was dying, literally, in a life that wasn't mine. I'm learning to live for me now." She didn't mention the vision or the grave. Those were hers alone, a sacred spark of her rebirth. Their conversation shifted to Anna's photography, her images capturing the raw beauty of rural life. "I post online, and people love it," Anna said, pulling out her phone to show Julie a photo of a sunset over a rice field. "I'm saving for a better camera, but it's slow. Still, I'm free. No one owns me." Her independence resonated with Julie, a reminder of the freedom she was claiming. Society had taught them both to serve others, Anna to her family, Julie to hers. But they were breaking those chains, forging their paths. As Anna left, promising to visit again, Julie opened her notebook, her pen moving swiftly. "Anna's my mirror, fighting for her place, as I fight for mine. I gave up teaching to be a wife and mother. But I'm whole again here. Society says women's value lies in sacrifice. But Anna proves it's in our strength. I'll live this time, for me and girls like her." The words grounded her, the vision's voice echoing. Live this time. Teaching wasn't just a job, it was a purpose, a way to empower others as she empowered herself. The lecture hall filled with students, their faces eager. Julie began her lesson, her voice steady, her heart alight with a new fire. She wasn't just teaching literature, she was sharing her rebirth, her defiance of a world that demanded she shrink. Anna's bag of gifts sat in the corner, a symbol of connection, a bond built on mutual respect, not an obligation. For the first time in years, Julie felt alive, her purpose clear, to live, teach, and be the woman she'd always meant to be. The city's pulse thrummed through Julie's apartment window, a modest 2-bedroom haven she'd rented after leaving the hotel. At 55, she stood in her new kitchen, the scent of fresh paint replacing the jasmine that had haunted her old home. 3 days remained to defy the fate that had buried her in another life. The vision of her grave, her name fading under moss, the voice whispering, "Live this time," a steady beacon in her heart. Reborn, Julie had found purpose in teaching, and a spark of family in Anna. But the shadow of her biological family lingered, a wound that ached with every unanswered call from Ethan and Emily. She sipped coffee, her notebook open on the counter, its pages filled with reflections on her rebirth. Teaching fills my days, Anna, and my heart. But Emily, my daughter, chose Sophie over me. I'm learning to let go, to live for myself, not her approval. The words anchored her, a reminder of the societal chains she'd broken. Chains that demanded mothers sacrifice endlessly, even when betrayed. In her past life, Julie had died serving a family that forgot her. And now, she guarded her new life fiercely, refusing to be pulled back. Her phone buzzed, Emily's name flashing. Julie hesitated, then answered, bracing for another plea to return. Instead, Emily's voice was a broken sob. "Mom, I need you. Please come to the hospital." The urgency pierced Julie's resolve, and against her better judgment, she drove to the city hospital, the vision's warning echoing. Live this time. She found Emily in a stark room, her face bruised, her arms marred with purple marks. At 30, Emily looked like a ghost of the vibrant girl Julie had raised, her eyes hollow with regret. "Mouse did this," Emily whispered, rolling up her sleeve to reveal more bruises. "I married him, Mom, against your advice. He's a gambler, a monster. I'm pregnant and I don't know what to do." Her words spilled out, a torrent of pain and confession. Julie's heart clenched, and the memory of Emily's betrayal, siding with Sophie and calling Julie selfish, clashed with the maternal instinct to protect. She'd have rushed to fix this in her past life, sacrificing her health for Emily's salvation. Now, reborn, she saw the truth. Emily's choices had led her here, just as Julie's had once led to her grave. She sat beside the bed, her voice steady but firm. "Get a divorce, Emily. Abort the baby. A child in this mess will only suffer. Hell mode from day one." The words were harsh, but Julie knew softness wouldn't save her daughter. Emily's eyes widened, tears streaming. "I can't give up on him. Maybe the baby will change him." Her hope was a fragile thread, one Julie recognized from her years of clinging to Ethan's indifference. Society had taught them both to endure, to believe love could fix the unfixable. But Julie's rebirth had shattered that illusion. "You're wrong," Julie said, her tone unyielding. "A man like Mouse doesn't change. You'll be tied to him, beaten, broke, and alone. I warned you, and you didn't listen." She stood, her heart heavy but resolute. "Get a lawyer, gather evidence of the abuse, and end this. I can't save you. You have to save yourself." Emily's sobs followed her, but Julie didn't turn back. The vision of her grave loomed, a reminder that her survival came first. She'd given Emily everything once, only to be discarded for Sophie. Now she'd protect her new life, even from her daughter's pain. As she drove home, Julie's thoughts drifted to Anna, whose strength contrasted sharply with Emily's weakness. Anna had fought for her future, refusing to let hardship define her, while Emily had fallen for a man who mirrored Ethan's neglect. The comparison stung, but it clarified Julie's path. She opened her notebook, writing, "Emily's paying for her choices, as I once did. I love her, but I won't die for her. Society says a mother's job never ends, but I'm rewriting that rule. My life is mine now." The words were a vow, the vision's voice a steady pulse. Live this time. Back at her apartment, Julie learned more from a mutual friend's call. Mouse had gambled away Emily's savings, leaving her destitute. Debt collectors hounded her, and Mouse's violence had escalated, each blowing a mirror to the emotional bruises Ethan and Sophie had dealt Julie. She felt a flicker of pity, but it was drowned by resolve. Emily had chosen this path, just as Julie had once chosen to endure Ethan's neglect. Her rebirth had taught her that love didn't mean sacrifice. It meant boundaries, a lesson Emily would learn the hard way. The city lights glittered outside, a canvas of possibility. Julie set her notebook aside, her coffee grown cold. Teaching awaited her tomorrow, and Anna's laughter was a promise of connection. Emily's descent was a tragedy, but wasn't Julie's to fix. She'd escaped her grave, and with 3 days left, she'd build a life that honored her worth, not her daughter's mistakes. The vision's command was clear: live and let others face the consequences of their choices. The university lecture hall buzzed with anticipation. Rows of students leaning forward as Julie stood at the podium, her notes a mere prop for the fire in her voice. At 55, she was a phoenix, reborn from the ashes of a life that had nearly buried her. The vision of her grave, her name fading under moss, the voice whispering, "Live this time," burned in her heart, with 2 days left to secure her escape from the fate that had killed her in another life. Teaching had given her purpose, Anna her heart, and Emily's descent a stark lesson in boundaries. Now, Julie was ready to share her truth with herself and the world that had tried to silence her. The lecture was on literature and resilience, but Julie veered from her syllabus, her eyes sweeping the room. "Today, I want to talk about something real," she began, her voice steady. "Society expects women to endure, to sacrifice their dreams, their health, and their very lives for others. I did that for 35 years and it nearly killed me." The room fell silent, students' pens pausing. Julie's heart raced, but the vision's command pushed her forward. Live this time. This wasn't just a lecture, but a rebellion against the chains that had bound her and countless others. She stepped from the podium, her hands gesturing with a passion she'd long suppressed. "I was a wife and a mother, taught to put my family first. I cooked, cleaned, and gave up promotions to be there for them. Society praised me for it and called me a good woman. But when I needed them, they turned away. I fainted from stress, and they called it drama. I died inside long before my body gave out." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on, the memory of her grave a spur. "I got a second chance, a wake-up call to live for me. And I'm here to tell you, break those chains. Your worth isn't in what you give others, it's in you." The students leaned in, some nodding, others wide-eyed. A young woman in the front row raised her hand, her voice tentative. "But what if people call you selfish? My mom says I must help my family, even if it means giving up my career." Julie's heart ached. She saw herself as the girl, molded by the same societal script. "They'll call you selfish," she said, her tone firm but kind. "But selfishness isn't a sin when it's about survival. Your dreams, your health, your life, they matter. Don't let guilt bury you." She shared her story, careful to guard the vision's secrecy. "I left my marriage and my home because staying meant losing myself. My daughter chose someone else's side, and I had to let her go. It hurt, but it freed me to find purpose here, with you and with people who value me." Anna's face flashed in her mind, her gratitude contrasting Emily's entitlement. Society's expectations are like invisible knives, cutting away at women's freedom. We're told to be quiet, to serve, to age gracefully. But I say, roar, live loudly for yourself. The room erupted in applause, students on their feet, their cheers validating Julie's truth. A male student called out, "What about men? Don't they face pressure too?" Julie nodded, her voice steady. "They do. But women carry a unique burden. Centuries of being told our role is to nurture, not to thrive. Men are pushed to succeed, women are forced to support. It's time for all of us to rewrite that story." The response was a wave of murmurs, some thoughtful, others inspired, and Julie felt a surge of purpose. Her rebirth wasn't just personal. It was a spark for change. After class, students lingered, sharing their stories of pressure and sacrifice. A girl with braided hair confessed, "I'm studying engineering, but my family wants me to marry young. You've given me the courage to keep going." Julie squeezed her hand, her heart full. She opened her notebook, writing, "Today, I spoke for them. For me, for every woman told to shrink. My grave taught me to live. Now, I'm helping others break free. Society's chains are heavy, but they're not unbreakable." The vision's voice echoed, "Live this time." As she left the hall, Anna waited outside, her camera slung over her shoulder. "I heard about your lecture," she grinned. "You're a rock star, Aunt Julie." Julie laughed, the sound free and genuine. Anna's presence was a reminder of what true connection felt like. Not obligation, but mutual respect. "Just trying to make a difference," Julie said, her voice soft. Anna's eyes sparkled. "You already have it for me, and now it is for them." The campus air was crisp, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of hope. Julie walked with Anna, her notebook tucked away, her heart alight with a new mission. Teaching was her purpose, but this, speaking truth, inspiring change, was her awakening. With 2 days left, she was no longer just surviving. She was reshaping the world that had tried to bury her. One lecture, one student, one defiant step at a time. The Yunnan sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet, as Julie and Anna sat on a hillside, the air alive with the scent of wildflowers. At 55, Julie felt the pulse of her rebirth, the vision of her grave, her name fading under moss, the voice whispering, "Live this time." A guiding star with 1 day left to secure her escape from the fate that had killed her in another life. Teaching had given her purpose, her lecture a voice to challenge society's chains. But here, with Anna, she found something more profound. A family not bound by blood, but by choice. Anna, her camera resting on her knee, snapped a photo of Julie laughing, her face framed by the sunset. "Aunt Julie, you look radiant," she said, her voice warm. At 22, Anna was a beacon of resilience, her freelance photography gaining a modest online following. Julie smiled, the ache of Emily's betrayal softened by Anna's presence. She'd sponsored Anna through school, moved by her orphaned struggle and fierce determination. Their bond was a lifeline, contrasting to the family that had discarded her. They'd come to Yunnan to travel, a promise Anna had made years ago on a crackling phone call from her village. "Anna said you saved me, Aunt Julie," her eyes tracing the horizon. "When my parents died, I was 12, cleaning houses to afford school. My brother's family couldn't help. They were barely surviving. Your sponsorship wasn't just money. It was belief. You saw me when I was invisible." Her voice trembled and Julie's heart clenched, seeing her past in Anna's words. Years of being unseen, serving Ethan and Emily while society praised her sacrifice. "You fought for yourself," Julie said, her voice soft. "That's what makes you special. I'm learning that now too." She thought of her past life, dying under the weight of Sophie's care, Emily's betrayal, and Ethan's neglect. The vision of her grave had woken her, demanding she live for herself. Anna's strength was a mirror, reflecting the courage Julie was claiming. Julie added that I used to think a woman's worth was in giving everything to others. Society taught me that. But you're proof we can be more. Anna's eyes glistened, but she grinned, nudging Julie's shoulder. "You're the proof, Aunt Julie. Leaving your marriage, teaching, speaking out, you're a badass." Julie laughed, the sound free, untethered. They sat in companionable silence, the hillside a sanctuary from the world that had tried to define them. Anna pulled out her phone and showed Julie their latest post, a photo of them at a Yunnan market. Julie was tasting spicy noodles, and her face was alight with joy. "We're blowing up online," Anna said. "People call you Aunt Julie the Great. They love your story." Julie scrolled through the comments, her heart swelling. "Thank you for showing women that they can start over. You're an inspiration, Aunt Julie." The words were a balm, proof her rebirth was rippling outward. "I didn't expect this," she admitted. "I just wanted to live." Anna leaned closer, her voice earnest. "You did more than live. You showed me I could fight for my dreams, even when the world said I shouldn't. I'm here because of you, but I stay because you're my family." The word, family, hit Julie like a wave. She'd lost Emily to Sophie's sway and Ethan to his guilt, but Anna's choice to stand by her was a gift. At a local guest house, Anna's family arrived that night, her brother, his wife, and their 5-year-old twins. They piled into Julie's room, arms full of homemade dumplings and laughter. "Aunt Julie, you're stuck with us," Anna's brother teased, the twins tugging at Julie's hands, calling her grandma. Tears pricked her eyes as she hugged them, the void left by Emily filled with this unexpected warmth. Over dinner, Anna shared more of her journey. "I was so shy at first, scared to post my photos. But you told me once, your voice matters. So I kept going, even when it was hard." Her brother nodded. "She worked nights, studied days, and never complained. You gave her that strength." Julie's heart ached with gratitude, and her notebook opened later as she wrote, Anna's family is mine now, not by blood, but by love. Society says family is a duty, but this is a choice. Real, unbroken. My grave taught me to live, and they taught me to love again. The vision's voice echoed. Live this time. Julie felt a new truth settle in her bones as the twins slept on her lap. She wasn't just surviving. She was building a life richer than she'd ever imagined. The Yunnan stars glittered above, each one a promise of a future unbound, with a family that saw her, valued her, and chose her. With one day left, Julie knew she'd already won. Her heart whole. Her life, her own. The department store buzzed with the chaos of Lunar New Year shoppers, their voices a vibrant hum against the clatter of carts. Julie, 55, navigated the crowd with Anna's family, the twins tugging at her hands, their laughter a shield against the past. Her rebirth's final day loomed, the vision of her grave, her name fading under moss, the voice whispering, live this time, a quiet triumph in her heart. Teaching had given her purpose, Anna's family her heart, but the ghosts of Ethan, Emily, and Sophie lingered, their betrayal a scar she'd learned to carry lightly. A commotion drew Julie's eye as they approached the women's section. Sophie's wheelchair lay tipped over, her frail form crumpled on the floor, her face a mask of practiced distress. Ethan stood frozen, his shoulders hunched, while Emily shouted, her voice raw with fury. You're a leech, Sophie! At your age, demanding a 5,000 yuan coat? Do you think you're still some delicate flower? The crowd gawked, whispers rippling, but Ethan said nothing, his silence a damning contrast to Sophie's theatrical sobs. Julie paused, Anna's hand on her arm. Aunt Julie, is that them? She whispered. Julie nodded, her heart steady but heavy. In her past life, she'd have rushed to smooth things over, society's voice urging her to be the peacemaker, the selfless wife. Now reborn, she saw the scene for what it was, a family unraveling under the weight of their own choices. Sophie's manipulation, once a chain around Julie's life, now ensnared Ethan and Emily, their dysfunction laid bare for all to see. Sophie's eyes flicked up, catching Julie's gaze. A flicker of displeasure crossed her face before she forced a weak smile. Julie, I'm so sorry. I never meant to cause trouble. Her voice was soft, a calculated plea. But Julie saw through it, the same tactic that had framed her as cruel in her past life, breaking cups to claim neglect. Save it, Julie said, her tone cool. You've made your bed. The words were a release, a final severing of Sophie's hold. Emily spotted Julie, her face a storm of desperation and rage. She rushed over, grabbing Julie's arm. Mom, you never bought clothes that were too expensive for yourself. Why should she get to wear it? Her voice cracked the bitterness of her choices, marrying Mouse, siding with Sophie, spilling out. Julie chuckled, the sound sharp. You chose this, Emily. You chose her. Live with it. She pulled free, her heart unburdened by the guilt society once forced her to carry. Anna's twins tugged at Julie's hands, their voices bright. Grandma, let's look at toys. Their innocence grounded her, a reminder of the family she'd found. She turned to leave, but Ethan's voice stopped her. Julie, how can you be so cold? Emily's hurting and Sophie's helpless. His words were a plea, but they lacked the fire of conviction. Julie met his gaze, seeing the man he'd become, hunched, aged, trapped by his inability to act. You let this happen, she said. You stood by while Sophie bled you dry, while Emily threw away her future. I'm done cleaning up your messes. The crowd's whispers grew louder and Sophie's sobs faltered, her performance crumbling under scrutiny. Emily's face twisted, her voice rising. She took Dad's money, Mom, 200,000 yuan, to keep up her lifestyle, and now she's demanding more. The truth spilled out, raw and unfiltered. Sophie had manipulated Ethan's retirement funds, leaving them scrambling, while Emily's marriage to Mouse had drained what little remained. Julie's heart stirred, not with pity, but with clarity. Sophie's arc was closing, and her schemes were exposed. Later, Anna shared news from a mutual friend. Sophie, abandoned by Ethan's dwindling patience, had returned to the U.S., living off charity in a small apartment, her charm no match for reality's grind. Julie felt no satisfaction, only closure. Sophie's manipulation had lost its power, and her fate was a consequence of her own making. Julie opened her notebook and wrote, "They fell apart without me holding them together. Society told me to fix them, to sacrifice. But my grave taught me to walk away. I'm free now, truly free." The vision's voice echoed, "Live this time." As Julie left the store with Anna's family, the twins' laughter filled the air, a melody of joy. The crowd's eyes followed, some curious, others admiring. Julie's heart was light and her rebirth was complete. Sophie's downfall, Ethan's silence, Emily's regret, they were no longer her burden. With Anna's hand in hers, she stepped into the bustling street. The New Year's lights, a promise of a future she'd claimed for herself. The glow of lunar New Year lanterns bathed Julie's apartment in warmth, the air rich with the scent of dumplings and laughter. At 55, Julie stood at the heart of her new home, surrounded by Anna's family, her brother, his wife, and their 5-year-old twins, whose chatter filled the void left by her past. Her rebirth was complete, the vision of her grave, her name fading under moss, the voice whispering, "Live this time," now a distant echo of triumph. The department store confrontation had closed the chapter on Ethan, Emily, and Sophie, leaving Julie free to embrace a life she'd crafted for herself. Anna bustled in the kitchen, her camera slung over her shoulder, snapping photos of the twins piling dumplings onto plates. "Aunt Julie, this is our best New Year yet," she called, her grin radiant. Julie laughed, her heart full, and the pain of Emily's betrayal was a faint scar. She'd spent decades serving a family that discarded her, society's voice insisting a woman's worth lay in sacrifice. Her rebirth had shattered that lie, and Anna's family, chosen, not owed, proved love could be mutual, not a debt. The twins tugged at her skirt, their voices bright. "Grandma, try our dumplings!" Julie knelt, hugging them, tears pricking her eyes at the title she'd never expected. The table was a mosaic of dishes, each a gift from Anna's family, who'd traveled hours to celebrate with her. Anna's brother raised a glass, to Aunt Julie, who gave us hope and now gives us family. The toast warmed Julie, starkly contrasting the cold indifference of her past life, where she'd died serving Sophie, unappreciated by Ethan and Emily. Through her grave's vision, she'd learned that true happiness came from living for herself, not others' demands. As they ate, Anna shared their online success. "Our Yunan photos went viral, Aunt Julie. Businesses offer free meals for exposure, and ad money is rolling in." She winked. "I'm splitting it with you. You're the star." Julie waved her off, smiling. "Keep it, Anna. My pension's enough. I don't lack anything." Her words were actual. Her savings, bolstered by Anna's repayment of her sponsorship, gave her freedom. But more than money, Anna's loyalty and her family's embrace filled her heart. Later, as the twins slept on the couch, Julie opened her notebook, her pen moving swiftly. "I thought family was a duty, a burden to bear. Society taught me to give until I broke, but Anna's family showed me love is a choice, a gift. My grave taught me to live, and they taught me to bloom." The vision's voice, once urgent, now felt like a gentle nod. Live this time. She'd survived and thrived, her life a tapestry of purpose and joy. A knock at the door broke her reverie. Ethan stood there, his frame stooped, eyes scanning her vibrant apartment. "You're doing well," he said, his voice tinged with regret. "Emily's sick, Julie. She needs you." Julie's heart stirred, but not with guilt. Emily's choices, marrying Mouse, siding with Sophie, had led to her downfall, and Julie had already offered advice she'd ignored. "She's not my responsibility anymore," Julie said, leaning against the doorframe. "You let Sophie drain you, Ethan. I'm not fixing that." Ethan's face crumpled, his clothes hanging loosely, a shadow of the man he'd been. "I saw you online," he admitted. "You're some celebrity now." Julie smiled, unapologetic. Her story, shared through Anna's posts, had inspired thousands, dubbing her Aunt Julie the Great. She'd become a beacon for women breaking free from societal chains, a role she embraced without seeking. "Cut to the chase," she said. "Why are you here?" He hesitated, then left, his silence an admission of defeat. Julie closed the door, the laughter from Anna's family pulling her back. The twins woke, clamoring for her attention, and Anna's sister-in-law handed her a gift, a scarf, vibrant and bold. "You deserve to shine," she said. Julie wrapped it around her shoulders, each thread symbolizing shedding her past burdens. She tried on new clothes from their shopping, each piece elegant, a stark contrast to the frugal wardrobe of her old life. Anna linked arms with her, the twins circling them. "Mom, you're buying this for me?" Anna teased, her voice piercing the air with joy. The twins chimed in, "Grandma, you're the best." Their love enveloped Julie, a warmth she'd never known with Ethan or Emily. As they stepped into the night, lanterns glowing above, Julie's heart bloomed. Her rebirth had led her to a family that chose her, a life that honored her. Happiness, true and radiant, was hers at last.